The Zephyrian High Command had studied humanity for 3 cycles before making their move. Their xenobiologists had concluded that these peculiar bipeds were fundamentally weak, divided by arbitrary lines on their planet, constantly warring amongst themselves and possessing technology barely advanced enough for rudimentary space travel. When the massive Zephyrian fleet darkened Earth's skies, Admiral Vexthal felt confident this would be the quickest conquest in galactic history. The initial bombardment was precise and calculated. Military installations across 6 continents were reduced to smoking craters within the first hour. Communication satellites fell silent. The electromagnetic pulse that followed crippled most electronic infrastructure, plunging entire cities into darkness. By the Zephyrian calculations, humanity should have surrendered immediately. They were wrong. Commander Sarah Chen crawled through the rubble of what had been Peterson Air Force Base, her tactical vest torn and her face streaked with dust and blood. Around her, the survivors, barely 30 from a base of 3,000, gathered whatever weapons and equipment they could salvage. The aliens had targeted the obvious military installations, but they had underestimated something fundamental about humans. "Ma'am," whispered Sergeant Rodriguez, pointing skyward through a gap in the collapsed ceiling. "They're landing." The Zephyrian dropships descended like metallic locusts, their anti-gravity engines humming with alien efficiency. As the first wave of soldiers emerged, tall insectoid creatures in powered armor, they expected to find a broken, cowering population ready for processing. Instead, they found Ahmed Hassan. The 60-year-old mechanic from Detroit had been working on his truck when the sky caught fire. Now clutching his grandfather's hunting rifle, a weapon the aliens hadn't bothered to scan for, he crouched behind the burned-out shell of a convenience store. When the first Zephyrian patrol rounded the corner, Ahmed's first shot punched through their energy shield and dropped their point soldier. The aliens froze in confusion. Their intelligence had indicated these primitives possessed only crude projectile weapons. How had one penetrated their advanced shielding? They didn't understand that Ahmed had spent 40 years perfecting his craft, that he had modified his ammunition using principles learned from a lifetime of making things work when they shouldn't. They didn't know that his grandfather had fought in 3 wars, teaching young Ahmed that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. Across the globe, similar scenes played out. In Mumbai, Dr. Priya Sharma used her chemistry knowledge to create improvised explosives from hospital supplies, turning her medical center into a fortress. The aliens' bioscanners couldn't detect the threat until it was too late. They had never encountered a species that could weaponize healing supplies. In the Amazon, indigenous tribes that had resisted colonization for centuries now faced a different kind of invader. But the jungle was their domain, and the Zephyrians' thermal sensors were useless against warriors who knew how to become one with their environment. Poison darts found gaps in alien armor, and ancient hunting techniques claimed technological superiority. The turning point came when Lieutenant Jake Morrison, a former NASA engineer turned Army reservist, managed to capture an intact Zephyrian communicator. While the aliens possessed superior technology, they had made a critical assumption: that a species divided against itself could never unify against an external threat. Within hours, Morrison's improvised transmissions reached resistance cells worldwide. The frequency hopping techniques he employed, borrowed from ham radio enthusiasts and refined through pure human stubbornness, allowed scattered groups to coordinate. The aliens had destroyed the internet, but they couldn't destroy human ingenuity. In Japan, high school robotics clubs began modifying their projects into delivery drones for improvised weapons. In Germany, brewers discovered their fermentation knowledge could be applied to creating biological agents that disrupted Zephyrian breathing apparatus. In Kenya, marathon runners became the galaxy's most effective message carriers, outpacing alien pursuit vehicles across terrain the invaders couldn't navigate. Admiral Vexthal watched the tactical displays with growing bewilderment. His forces controlled every major military installation, every seat of government, every strategic resource. By every logical measure, humanity should have capitulated. Instead, resistance was growing stronger. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking nervously, "we're receiving reports of coordinated attacks across 73 urban centers. The humans are using improvised weapons." "Impossible!" Vexthal hissed. "Our psychological profiles indicate this species prioritizes individual survival over collective action." What the Zephyrians hadn't understood was that humans were paradoxical creatures. Yes, they fought amongst themselves, but that very experience had taught them how to fight. Every human conflict had been a training ground, every disagreement a lesson in tactical thinking. The species that had survived ice ages, pandemics, and countless wars wasn't about to surrender to alien invaders. The end came not with a grand battle, but with the simple persistence that defined humanity. When Zephyrian supply lines began failing due to constant harassment, when their troops started exhibiting stress-induced breakdowns from fighting an enemy that refused to follow conventional warfare rules, when reports reached the fleet of humans actually reverse engineering captured technology faster than expected, Admiral Vexthol made the only logical choice. The retreat order came on the 7th day. As the alien fleet vanished into hyperspace, Sarah Chen stood among the ruins of civilization and smiled grimly. Humanity would rebuild, they always did. But now they knew they weren't alone in the universe, and more importantly, the universe now knew that humans didn't yield. In the depths of space, Admiral Vexthol filed his report with High Command, adding humanity to the galactic database with a new classification. Avoid at all costs. Species exhibits dangerous levels of adaptability and refuses to acknowledge superior force. The humans had taught the galaxy a simple lesson. Never underestimate a species that had survived by refusing to give up.